for Board of Education candidates. In front of you are seated our first panel of at-large candidates. They are seated in alphabetical order. I want to introduce Tanya Bowie, who will be serving as our moderator. And I left Tanya's introduction someplace else, so I got up here too soon. So can I get you to introduce yourself? Yes, thank you. I'll get it right for the second panel. Would appreciate recording this so that we can then put it up on our website as YouTube. So if you know people who are not able to come this evening, or not able to live stream, but they can watch the YouTube, give us a week to get it up and distribute it. Please refrain from applause and other disruptions so that we can get through. Tanya will explain the rules of engagement and the ground rules. So thank you, and here is Tanya.
Thank you so much, Linda. My name is Tanya Bowie. I am the chair of the Asian American Political Alliance. I also am the owner and founder of PWC Strategies, a political communications consulting firm based here in Montgomery County. I've spent my career helping lead communications efforts and manage a number of statewide and county races here in Maryland. And I am also a contributing writer for Gender on the Ballot, which is a project of American University to close the gender gap. So I'm very excited to be here tonight and to gather with everyone at this storied building, the Carver Educational Services Center, and it's a very fitting place. And so this event is really going to give you a great idea of how the candidates are, along with their platforms, and why they should be your choice in this year's primary on June 23rd. So we have 2 school board races in contention this year. Those are for candidates who are running for at-large and for District 3. So tonight we're going to do something a little different. We are going to have 2 separate panels, and we will have the first set of candidates sit on the dais, and they will be sitting next to each other so you can see as they give their responses and how they compete against each other. All registered voters may vote for their preferred candidates in all Board of Education races, no matter where they live in the county. And in between panels, we are going to have a break. So we encourage you to stay for both during our event. So the first panel up are our wonderful candidates who are running for Board of Education at large. First we have Wylea Chase, Brenda Diaz, and Omar Lazo. So before I begin, I want to go over a little bit of housekeeping and ground rules. Please make sure to turn off your phones so we do not disturb our candidates in our video recording. As Linda had mentioned, we want you to please refrain from applauding or cheering during individual responses. We also have a timekeeper to keep us on track. She is in the front row, so everyone will be able to see those signs. Yellow sign will indicate we have 30 seconds remaining, with the red stop sign indicating that time is up. Candidates, you must stop at the end of your time so everyone has an equal chance to respond, but I will allow you to finish your sentence. You may not save your time on one question and add it to another. So questions have been developed by the principal sponsoring organizations of our event. Unfortunately, given time restraints, we cannot take questions from the audience, but we encourage our audience members to connect with the candidates outside the auditorium after our forum. Each candidate has 60 seconds to respond to the questions. Candidates are seated in alphabetical order. Candidates will not be speaking in the same order for each question, so that for this to be fair. And I want to let the candidates know, unfortunately, none of the microphones are working on this dais, so you will have to share a microphone and pass it to each other. There's a 5-second lag, so once you turn it on, just pause, take a deep breath before you answer the question. So the clock will start when you begin to speak. Again, you have 1 minute to respond for each question. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with our first question. The question will begin with the topic of the budget. So in light of Montgomery County's current structural deficit, funding deficit, what are your qualifications for developing an operating budget? We're going to start with Mr. Lazo.
It takes 5 seconds. I guess this is par for the course for MCPS, where we got to share a microphone. So my name is Omar Lazo. Thank you all for being here. When it comes to the budget deficit, I have a lot of experience. I come from a business background. I've opened and owned several businesses over my lifetime. So I grew up in the small business industry. And with that, working civically, I've worked on the board of trustees for Montgomery College. I was there during the pandemic, during COVID, tackling those challenges when we weren't sure if we were going to have any money coming in from the federal government or from the state or from the county. So it was a tough time. We were able to get through it and make sure that we took care of our folks and we took care of our students as well. So a lot of experience there. I'm also chair of the Workforce Development Board, and we get funds from the federal government as well that we're in charge of. So as far as budgeting goes, I come with a lot of experience.
Thank you. Ms. Diaz.
So in terms of my qualifications and being able to analyze the budget, I look very closely at a lot of what our community watchdog organizations have to say about what's happening within MCPS and the waste that's driving our budget right now. So some of those community watchdog organizations are Montgomery County Taxpayers League and the Parents Coalition. They go through the budget line item by line item, and so I look at their recommendations. And besides that, my experience as an MCEA building rep, that time I was able to go through the contracts and be a part of those discussions, not necessarily in the making of the contracts, but just as being a building rep. So I have the contract experience. I have a lot of deep research that I've conducted myself. I just recently published a Substack article that went into a deep dive on this budget question. And I depend and I look at those community watchdog organizations trusting and knowing that they're doing the job that the current Board of Education is not doing.
Thank you. Ms. Chase.
Okay, thank you all for being here this evening. So I have vast experience in dealing with organizational budgets, nothing like $3.7 billion, but definitely of being a good steward with limited funds. Being a nonprofit leader, some of you may know that in this room, that's all you do, right? Rob Peter to pay Paul. And so I have vast experience running the Black and Brown Coalition. Budgets is what we did all day. But also, in addition to that, worked hand in hand in lockstep with trusted community stakeholder organizations such as Education Trust, Common Ground, to really break apart the budget. And so we had sessions over several days working with Education Trust, Common Ground, just to name a few of the organizations, and invited community members in to understand the MCPS budget, line for line, transparency, so that we could then equip our parents and caregivers as to how to advocate, right? So you don't know what you don't know. And so work closely with those organizations to make that happen. So I have vast experience with budgets. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Moving on to the second question, and we're going to stay on the topic of budgeting. What should be the highest priorities in the county's capital improvements program planning for our schools? We'll start with Ms. Diaz.
Our highest priority for our capital improvements budget should focus on obviously the mold and our dilapidated buildings that we have throughout Montgomery County. In a recent article that I just published about the lack of fiduciary duty, the fact that MCPS is not meeting, it's failing its fiduciary duty to our students, I cited a number of schools that are being failed right now. We know that Wooten was neglected for years on end, despite their advocacy. We know that Damascus was only just recently put on that list. Twin Brook Elementary was just recently removed from that list. Goshen Elementary School was recently published that's having a major mold problem. This would have been a school that my daughters would have needed to attend if they didn't attend Maryville Elementary, which is the French immersion school. So we have a major problem, which is fixing our HVAC and fixing our buildings. So that would be my major priority, is making sure that our students are attending schools that are safe for them to just breathe in.
Thank you, Mr. Lazo.
So I think it's pretty apparent. I mean, we're sitting in a pretty old building here, and I've been touring a lot of these schools. You know, I'm running at large, so I've been going to Damascus, Poolsville, Germantown, Gaithersburg, etc. And one of the things that I've seen is that maintenance hasn't been kept up. It hasn't been standardized. So we talk about CIP. We definitely have to make sure that we are fixing the HVAC issue that we have. We're $750 million in the hole. And honestly, that's not something that happens overnight. That's something that's happened over many, many years. You know, and that's part of what I want to bring to the table, is to make sure that I'm looking at this budget and making sure that we can balance it and make sure that we are safeguarding it going forward. So for me, is making sure that our kids and our educators are comfortable in their schools. And with that, we also have to make sure that we look at schools like Magruder's and other schools like Wooten, that kids should not be in these schools. They're really, really in bad shape.
Thank you. Ms. Chase.
So, unfortunately, there are many, many priorities, right? We all know what's happening with our capital improvement budget and what things have been kicked down the can for years, kicked the can down the road for years. And so, for me, while I know that every school community believes that they are a priority, and they absolutely are, I would love to have some asset mapping. I know that MCPS has that data to show us what are those schools who are most in need. How can we chip away and not, obviously we don't have the budget to bite the whole elephant, but how can we chip away, right? And what are those schools in most need right now? I know from visiting schools most recently that there's an elementary school, for example, whose HVAC is just, it's kaput, right? But it's not replaced, it's supposed to be a 25-year HVAC, but they're in year 10. But it's out of warranty. And the school has been at 99 degrees. That is one of the summer school sites. I would say that that's a priority. Are there other schools who are much worse with breathing issues? Probably. But we need that information to begin to have that asset mapping so we know.
Thank you, Ms. Chase. Moving on to the next question. This one's going to be on mental health. Mental health needs among MCPS students have persisted since the pandemic and are affecting classroom learning. How would you ensure students have access to necessary mental health supports? And we'll start with Mr. Lazo.
So I think, and this is, I mean, I have 3 daughters in the system, by the way, and my daughters have had my daughters in particular have had good experiences. But what I'm really, you know, when I go out and I talk to other parents in other schools in other areas, they're not having the same experience that my daughters had. So it's also making sure that we're standardizing, we're making sure that we're making sure that all of our kids are getting the same quality of mental health services as maybe my kids did. And I can tell you, my daughter, my 15-year-old, got into a fight protecting one of her friends in her school. You know, she felt comfortable going to the counselor. They helped her out. They brought some specialists in conflict resolution. Worked it all out. She was suspended for 1 day, and at the end of the year, she was good friends with that same person. Those are the kind of things where you see that they're working, and we have to put more funding into those types of programs.
Thank you. Ms. Chase.
Mental health needs for our students are vast, and the support is absolutely needed. I can tell you that, so many of us may already know, but in 60 seconds, MCPS cutting of positions affect our most vulnerable. More specifically, our Black and brown students especially, right? And so cutting social workers, family engagement specialists, we're going down, folks, we're going down to 12 family engagement specialist positions. That is only 1 per cluster, okay? Going down social workers, I don't know if you all know, but social workers were added to MCPS during and after the pandemic with one-time funding, emergency ESSER funding during COVID. We knew that that funding was gonna go away. Well, it's gone away, and so our social workers are going away. So how do we ensure, as a board member, that our kids get the mental health supports that they need? We have to reach back into our trusted stakeholder community. We need HHS to come to the table and support what MCPS never should have been doing in the first place.
Thank you. Ms. Diaz.
I believe that parents and working with parents are the key, and working with teachers are the key to helping our students recover their mental health and to make their mental health stronger. One of the ways in which we can do that is to be consistent in applying phone-free school throughout MCPS. Jonathan Haidt is the publisher, he's the author of the book, The Ancient Generation, and there he describes how phones have really deteriorated our children's mental health. And so just removing and being consistent with having phone-free schools. I would also make sure that our children have long periods of time outside during recess. We've cut recess. We use recess as a point of punishment within our schools, and that needs to stop. Our children need time to play, they need time to exercise, they need time to freely play. So I would prioritize that. I would remove Chromebooks from the elementary and the middle schools. Unfortunately, our children are exposed to inappropriate content. The MCCPTA recently discussed that on a recent podcast. And then I would seek to support the explicit permission from parents if they children want to speak to a mental health counselor within MCPS.
Thank you. The next question is on hate and bias incidents. What specific actions would you take to improve how schools recognize and effectively respond to hate and bias incidents? We'll start with Ms. Chase.
I would hold MCPS accountable as a board member. That means holding Dr. Taylor accountable to actually implementing with fidelity the things that they have in their own hate bias protocols, as well as their student code of conduct, which is not being followed with fidelity. Somehow, though, it is when it comes to our most marginalized, again, our Black and brown students. So what we know is that our students, our Black and brown students specifically, are 22% of the MCPS school population, but are suspended at a rate of 44%. And so, again, as a board member, how I would work on that is holding MCPS, our superintendent, accountable to enacting the policies that actually exist, but also having true community representation when those decisions are being made about our student code of conduct, when those decisions are being made about CEOs versus SROs, not the same people all the time, which is not representative of this school community.
Thank you. Ms. Diaz.
I think one of the major things that we have to do within MCPS, we talk a lot about training our teachers and staff about hate bias incidents and what that looks like to recognize it and then respond to it. But I think also on a historical level, if teachers are not, it's not just like incident by incident. I was a former teacher in MCPS, and so I know it's a click by click thing to receive that training. But as a social studies teacher, I know that hate bias incidents happen over a period of time due to polarization within a country, due to polarization within a county. And so that takes looking at historical incidents. That takes time to study those events. And so I would prioritize looking at that. And then in terms of responding to it, enforcing the student code of conduct once again, having a database so we can accurately track what's happening within our buildings, and just staying focused and staying aligned with promoting a culture of respect within MCPS.
Mr. Lazo.
So I think we need to do a better job of bringing our community, into the conversation as to what is acceptable and what's not. I think part of the issues that we keep having is I don't think people know what the line is. There's comments that are made, and as I'm touring the county more and more, you just hear absolutely ridiculous incidents of hate, anti-Semitism. And one of the things that I have really, a recurring theme, anti-Semitism is on the rise here in Montgomery County. It's on the rise countrywide. We're number 9. Maryland is ranked 9th in incidents of anti-Semitism. So for us, is bringing in and also making sure that our educators are trained to understand what the line is. what things are not acceptable at all. So I think we need to work a lot better with our community partners to make sure that we're educating our educators and that we're educating our students most importantly, because a lot of it is coming from our students.
Thank you. The next question is on immigration enforcement. Given the current concerns about immigration enforcement around schools, what specific steps would you take to ensure that every student and staff member is protected regardless of their immigration status? We'll start with Ms. Diaz.
Well, our students' information is protected already, and so that's something that we don't necessarily need to worry about. There's no reason to divulge information if someone from ICE were to come to our schools and to ask questions about any of that. I believe the county doesn't necessarily work directly with ICE, and so there's that protection. And then also, just in terms of schools, just making sure that whoever comes into our schools, that these are people who are meant to be in our schools, that we're working with them appropriately as we should. We don't want to give information out that doesn't need to be delivered to someone that's not a parent, and restricting that information. Obviously, we don't want any incidents to happen on our campuses, and so I would make sure that our students feel safe within that. Having a school resource officer would definitely improve that situation. That would be a second barrier to protect our students from those type of incidents from taking place on our campus.
Thank you, Mr. Lazo.
I think we need to continue to grow our partnerships with our community partners. One of the issues is our parents and our kids. MCPS is the government. And that's the issue a lot of times with the parents, is they're afraid to seek services, to seek resources, because they're afraid that their name's gonna go into the system and then they're gonna be persecuted. So for us, I think it's continuing to work with our community partners to make sure that we're offering these wraparound services and that we're using these partners that are trusted within the different communities. And whether that's Islamic, Jewish, Latino, we have to make sure that we're strengthening those bonds and that we're working with folks that already have that trust. We don't have to build that, it's already there. So for me, it's making sure that we're continuing to work with them so that we can, let them know what their rights are. And I think as a county, I'm proud of our community, because our community has really stepped up, and especially for our Latino neighbors. So I would continue that.
Thank you, Ms. Chase.
So, just a direct answer would be to hold MCPS accountable and compel them to work with those trusted community stakeholders who have reached in and who have been proactive. From the beginning, MOCO IRC, Immigration Rights Coalition, has offered to work with MCPS for free, right? So it's great that MCPS has these policies of, and all schools do, of not working with ICE, not letting them on campus and all sorts of things, but what does that really look like in practice? Our parents and caregivers don't know. In fact, our teachers don't know in many instances. And so MOCO IRC has worked with some of those teachers on the side because MCPS is not allowing them in, right? And so what that looks like specifically is Councilmember Kristen Mink, amongst others, has worked with MOCO IRC to educate over 200 teachers who self-identified, who said, we want to help and support our students, how can we do this? And so, again, what I would do is compel MCPS to be open, honest, and transparent about what it looks like boots on the ground to support our students and parents against ICE.
Thank you. The next question is on civic engagement. What more should MCPS do to promote engaged citizenship among its students? We'll start with Mr. Lazo.
I think our students, I think we have very bright students now, and I've been speaking to a lot of our students, but I think where the barrier is really not the students, it's really the parents. We need to reach the parents and make them understand the importance of civics and getting involved. Because I think a lot of them just don't have an example. I'm talking to 18-year-olds and they're like, well, my parents never talked to me about voting. I don't know what a council member is. I don't know what, what a county executive is. It really goes back to also just really working on our civics. I have 3 daughters. They probably know more about politics than I think your average child, because their dad has been involved in this for over 20 years. But I think, we have to really make sure that the parents understand the importance and relay that to their children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chase.
So for me, civic engagement isn't relegated to politics. I think that our kids understand more if we show the alignment between their own lives and their lived experiences and how what is happening in the world absolutely impacts them. I don't think that we can leave here tonight without talking about the rollback of the Voting Rights Act, right? That is absolutely something that our kids, our community should be civically engaged about. How does that affect you in your household? How does that affect you and your family and where you live? I know that we believe here in Montgomery County that we're in a bubble and these things don't affect us. It absolutely does. And so how do we get our kids civically engaged? We show them the alignment between what is happening in the world and how that impacts them. And then how they can get actionable and how they can be involved. Our kids can teach us, folks, I have to tell you. I work, again, with an organization called Seek Common Ground, and they work with kids all over the country on civic engagement. And not just those kids that we always see, but kids at every level.
Thank you. Ms. Diaz.
As a social studies teacher, as someone who teaches government almost every single day, who spends nonstop time talking with my students about our Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, our founding documents, I find it incredibly important that before a student or any American gets involved civically in civic life, that they have a very strong understanding of these founding documents, that they have a strong foundation in our American legacy, going all the way back to the Magna Carta. What does that even mean to have that as a legacy? So you have to read those documents directly. You have to read the Declaration of Independence. You have to do a deep dive on it. You have to do a deep dive on the Constitution, how it came to be, the Articles of Confederation. You have to do a deep dive on the Bill of Rights and how that came to be, the debate between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. We think that that history has nothing to do with us today. It absolutely impacts our everyday lives. The vocabulary that is used in the media is pulled from those documents directly, and so we need to understand them if we want our students to be responsibly engaged in civics.
The next question is on curriculum-based approaches. What curriculum-based approaches do you support that could overcome persistent disparities in outcomes for Black, Brown, and other historically underserved students? We'll start with Ms. Chase.
Can you repeat the question? Please repeat the question.
Yes. The question is, what curriculum-based approaches do you support that could overcome persistent disparities in outcomes for Black, Brown, and other historically underserved students?
So I support a curriculum-based approach that is inclusive and representative of our current MCPS demographic. And right now it isn't. Too much is missing, right? And our kids need to see themselves reflected back in what they're learning and what they're seeing here. And it shouldn't be that that there has to be a Black person in the room, or that there has to be a Jewish person in the room, or a person who is Muslim in the room to catch things that might be wrong, right? Things that might be said, all of those things. But if we have a curriculum that is inclusive and again representative of our current demographic, then those are things that I won't say that we don't have to worry about, but we would be on the right track. And so more specifically, we don't have to wait for Black History Month to have true Black history represented in our curriculum. We don't have to wait for, Asian American Appreciation Month for that to be included in our curriculum.
Thank you. Ms. Diaz.
Curriculum-based approaches. So this is something that I love doing a deep dive in. So in order to break or to shorten or to close that achievement gap, one of the things that we absolutely have to do is to follow the model of the Southern Surge states and even Mississippi, which Karen Bates, V-A-I-T-E-S, if you care to look into her research, has gone into much research over. So she has talked about whole books, making sure that her students are reading whole entire books. MCCPTA also came out with a study based on the opportunity myth. And if you read that study, they found that MCPS does not issue grade appropriate assignments. That many of our students are not getting grade appropriate assignments. So we need to make sure that the assignments are actually on task, meeting their grade level. We need to keep our gifted and talented programs. There needs to be explicit instruction in math, textbooks issued to our students so parents are able to follow along and help their students. As a tutor who has helped students in math here in Montgomery County, the reason why I'm hired is because they don't know where they are in the books.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Lazo.
Hello? All right, so I knew a lot of our curriculum actually comes down from the state. So I think for us, it's really working with our state partners to make sure that that it's inclusive and representative of our Black and Brown students. In 2019, I started with the Black and Brown Coalition for Educational Equity and Excellence, and I looked at a lot of the different issues that are affecting our Black and Brown students. And to be honest with you, it still hasn't changed much from when I started that. I was a member of that coalition back in 2019. So for me, it's continuing to make sure that we standardize, what we're teaching as well. I think one of the biggest issues that we have is it's really relying on a particular teacher. So I believe that we really need to focus a lot more on education of our educators and invest in our own people. And I don't think we're doing enough of that. And what I realize is we are not standardized on so many different things, from curriculum to maintenance to just so many things across the country. So we need to focus more on that.
Thank you. So we've reached our last question. This last question is, given that board members decide on matters of policy, please provide us a specific example of how you personally have managed conflict and how you have reached consensus. We'll start with Mr. Lazo.
Manage conflict. I mean, I'm involved in the world of politics, so a lot of different conflict. I can tell you, my approach to everything is to really research the facts on everything. I don't just go by data. I'll give you an example of something that I was very involved in. There's a program at Edison High School for students at night, the CREA program. I got a call from one of the teachers that told me, hey, they're taking away 2 staff members, one an ESOL teacher, from our program. We don't know why, but they're taking them. It turns out most of these kids were failing their GED exam. They never asked why. I go there, I find out that Maryland was one of the only states that required you to take 1 of 4 modules in English. So they could take the 3 in Spanish, and one of them they were forced to take in English. They were failing that English module. I was able to go, bring the Board of Education in, and we were able to get Delegate Greg Wims to pass a bill to change that, and now you can take the GED completely in Spanish.
Thank you. Ms. Chase.
So conflict resolution doesn't mean that everybody agrees. And I have experience in conflict resolution, having led several nonprofit organizations, being a mom of 4, ages 35, 27, 16, and 14. So I have that lived experience. But again, it doesn't mean that everybody agrees. Hard decisions have to be made. Everybody won't like it, but if we start from who are our constituents, our students, and if we start from what is best for them, for all of them, no matter your zip code, no matter your race, no matter your religion, no matter your gender, if we start from there, but working with and specific about our most marginalized, then we can come to consensus on what is most necessary. I have experience in that, again, through nonprofit organizations, through my work with MCPS. I've been an educational equity advocate for over 25 years, and I've been working with MCPS since we moved here in 1998, across several different superintendents. Thank you.
Ms. Davis.
So when I began teaching, the first school that I worked at was a private progressive school down in DC. And I started teaching in the Spanish department, and I quickly took on the position of an administrator as a curriculum coordinator. When I was there was nothing in our department. We had no books, we had no professional development, nothing. So it was me and some other teachers who were teaching across the school Spanish at different levels. And so I approached the principal, our director, and I said it's time for us to have formal professional development for our Spanish teachers. And we negotiated that, we talked about that, and in our first year, everyone attended the local DC Spanish conference, Spanish language conference, and then the year after that, 2 of us attended the regional conference, the Northeast Conference on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, and then the year after that, 4 of us attended, with every single year, all of us attending the local. So this is what happens when you negotiate, right? You identify the need, you sit down, you negotiate about those needs, and then you meet that mission, and everyone is satisfied.
Thank you so much. So we have reached the end of our first panel with our at-large candidates, so please give them a round of applause. So we thank you for being brief and your responses on this panel. It looks like we ended a little early, which gives you an opportunity to ask more questions privately with our candidates here, so I'm hoping they'll stay around for a little bit. We are going to start our next panel around 8 o'clock, so I hope that everyone takes a break, stretch your legs, use the bathroom, come back here around 7:55, and we'll convene the next set of candidates who are running for district. Thank you so much.